that it's safe Democrat, but we've looked at the numbers, and unfortunately, they don't look very good for us, because while the Republican that has thrown his name in the ring, or she has thrown her name in the ring for the last 20 years, receives about 25% of the vote every time they throw their name in. The Democrat gets 75% of the vote. Half of the Republicans in that district, 57,000 registered, half of them don't show up to vote. We can take this seat. If we will get serious about who we are, and that it is our side that has the message of freedom and prosperity. We just heard it from our young. They understand what it means to be a person of traditional values, desiring a limited role of government in their individual lives, free markets, the opportunity to dream big and aspire to reach those dreams, and then to have a strong national defense, a protection of our personal pursuits and interests. The ideals and the ideas are on our side. So I'm very, very honored for the opportunity to not only be a Republican, but to run as a Republican. I've been asked to talk this morning about cap and trade, and I'm glad that I get a chance to discuss an issue. And some people might think, well, what is Star Parker doing talking about taxes, cap and trade, or cap and tax? Because usually she's talking about herself, and you're absolutely right, I do talk about myself a lot because I tell my personal journey. But it's not as if I have not had experience discussing social policy, because as I mentioned already, I work in Washington, D.C., so quite a few social policy issues come across our desk. This is not one of my specialty areas, but it has implications against those who I represent in Washington, D.C., the most vulnerable, the ones at the bottom rung of the ladder, who, before we change the rules of engagement, we should consider the impact of legislation like cap and trade. What's interesting about this particular initiative of the environmentalists, this part of their movement, is that they want to cut down on carbon emissions that allegedly are contributing to the planet warming. And this is accomplished the same way that the left always accomplishes the things that they don't want. They tax it. It was Ronald Reagan that told us if it moves, they tax it. If it keeps moving, they regulate it. And when it stops moving, they subsidize it. But before I want to address this issue of cap and trade, let's look at the condition of our state, California. And I want to ask, do we really need more taxes, more regulation, more government dictates? Recently, Chief Executive Magazine surveyed 651 CEOs around the country to rate the business climate in each state. California finished last. Our overtaxed, overregulated, overunionized, overgoverned state lost more than 1 million jobs in the current recession that have not been recovered. Now, I passed out a chart that some of you have in front of you. I forgot in coming here today to ask how many people to expect, so we're a few charts short, but you might want to look at that. The graph in front of you shows that there are fewer jobs today in California than there were 10 years ago. Now, the graph will also show you that Texas, which these CEOs rated first in the climate for doing business, hardly lost any jobs during the recession, and they have more jobs today than when the recession started. Obviously, we're doing something wrong, and Texas may be doing something right, and so we ought to look at what that difference is. Well, this bleak picture is about the reality of our state, and to keep this in mind as I get into the discussion about cap and trade and how it will make our matters worse. You can determine if you think it's a good idea. No one would argue the point that even when things are tough, we need to pay taxes for what's essential. No responsible Californian would question this. But let's look at the reality squarely in the eye when it comes to what we're talking about as a nation when it comes to cap and trade. The so-called global warming crisis is driven by two premises. Premise number one is that an irreversible warming of the planet is taking place. The second premise is that this irreversible warming is caused by human activity, specifically the burning of carbon-based fuels and the emission of carbon dioxide. Al Gore and environmentalists would have us believe that both of these premises have already been proven true. And for people that haven't followed this debate or might have trouble understanding what exactly is going on, for a simple explanation, what these creature worshippers are saying is that carbon dioxide is creating an ozone layer around the earth. That ozone layer is creating a greenhouse effect, pushing down the heat. And that's making the earth warm. And we're all going to die if this continues. So they want to make sure that this does not continue. But anyone who's been following the data over the years knows that there have been many dissenting views by various scientists. And then last year is when we found out that those dissenting views were being suppressed, that the scientists at global warming headquarters at the climate change unit in England were cooking the books. Many of you may have caught that in passing on one of the news networks that would actually tell the truth. It's very difficult to see it on the other news, and that's what I want to tell you. For anyone that doesn't understand where we are as a society or not seeing a sense of urgency to really increase your numbers, to make sure that we are doing everything we can in this particular environment to be a part of this infrastructure so that we can win every seat in this state and across this nation. If you don't believe what's going on, then just sit one evening watching MSNBC, Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow. You watch that one evening and you will say, I better get up and do something. I'm going to register right now. I am going to make sure that I'm at the fair. I'm going to make sure that I'm down at the customs when all of our new Americans are sworn in and we can tell them about ourselves and what it is that we represent so that we can make sure that they check the right box on their registration form. Because this is very serious. This was a big scandal in just this one area. We've heard about many other areas, but just this one area, they were caught red-handed. The official science driving the claims about global warming have been proven that they were politicized and bogus. The information has been produced by reputable scientists showing that over thousands of years, the temperature of the Earth climate fluctuates. The truth is that we really don't know what's going on. And the truth is that to take on such an enormous cost to solve a problem that we clearly don't know if it exists is crazy. In fact, in the words of the late writer Michael Crichton, nobody believes a weather prediction 12 hours ahead. Now we're asked to believe a prediction that goes 100 years into the future? And then to make financial investments based on this prediction? Has everybody lost their mind? And according to economist Arthur Laffer, the American economy could actually shrink 5%. We could go down 5% in 10 years if cap and trade were passed. The potential loss of income for a family of 4 would be $10,800. And according to the American Council for Capital Formation, the impact on California would be a loss of $70 billion a year and the loss of 300,000 jobs. This is very serious what's going on. Electricity prices could spike by 27%. Is this what we need now? For a problem that is not even clear we even have? No, I'm afraid what we have here is left-wing elitists paying for their fantasies on the backs of the working American families. And you know what, regarding low-income Americans, the answer is really clear. You know what's amazing is when we see polling data about the African American community and the Latino community, especially in districts like mine where we have larger numbers,